let's air it to the world.
That's usually what I say about whether I'm wearing pants or not.
What are pants?
Start the game already!
I do have a random thought that I'd like to share, and I may have shared this with you before, but I want to start a company called Pants, and all we sell is hats. And then have a sister company called Hats, and all we sell is pants. So here's the surprise. For those of you who don't know, I've had my camera covered. I'm going to uncover my and I am speaking to you through the ghost of Don King's wig.
That is an absolutely impressive. You can't call it a pop filter. Like, that's a windsock.
It's a hair. It's a muff. It's a merkin. I put a merkin on my microphone.
That is hilarious. Is that the same mic as before?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's a PG-58 buried under all that hair. Got no hair on my head, so I put it on my microphone. I've been collecting that. Every time I shave my pubes, I've been gluing it to a little sock, and now it's on my microphone.
Now there's a thought.
Yeah.
Now I can spend the next 3 months doing comparisons between your beard color and that sock color until they align.
They're pretty close, actually. I was surprised when I got it. I couldn't find it's actually I forget what the heck they call it. It's a dead cat, I think. And I couldn't find one for my microphone. But I did find one that approximately fits, and it approximately fits good enough. Carry on.
Yeah. Helps clear up some of those plosives. How have you been, man? It's been a hot minute.
Not so bad. Did some traveling this weekend. Went and saw my various mothers for Mother's Day. The in-laws and the outlaws. Yeah. How about you?
It's been an insanely busy couple of weeks. And I couldn't tell you any specific reason why. Just lots of stuff around work and miscellaneous things that were eating up some time. I spent my annual tradition of a week and a half watching the Leafs play some playoff hockey. That's done now.
Yes, I also am not a hockey fan, so I cheer for the Leafs.
What are you drinking?
I have a butterscotch and rum mixture. Well, I have butter ripple schnapps and rum and Coke. And it's surprisingly tasty.
Nice.
Yeah. What have you got tonight?
I'm digging into one of those Mott's Clamato The Works horseradish Caesars.
Okay.
It tastes absolutely nothing like what you're drinking, but still pretty decent.
I mean, it's okay if you like tomatoes and fish. I'm not a fan. It's funny, because when you describe what a Caesar is, I always think, you know what, that would be really, I don't like tomato juice. Also, clam juice doesn't appeal to me at all. Can I have a Caesar with no tomato, with no clamato, just the rest of everything that goes into a Caesar? I mean, that's basically vodka with a celery stick in it, right?
Salt, yeah.
Yeah, celery, salt, horseradish.
They probably have a name for that.
Probably. I mean, if it's with tomato juice instead of clamato juice, it's a Bloody Mary. That's more or less the same thing, right? I don't know. I'm not a big mixed alcohol fun thing guy. I'm more of a pour it in a glass and drink it guy.
So what have you been up to?
Not a heck of a lot. I mean, you've got a whole bunch of stuff written down here to ask me questions about video games, and since we last talked, I don't think I've turned on my computer.
Really?
Yeah. Almost not. Yeah, because I've been working during the day, and it's nice outside now, so I've been cutting the grass, I've been golfing, I've been, going out and sitting on the back deck. Not a lot of time for video games. I've been going to bed early, too, which is, I don't think I've done that since I was 12. I highly recommend it. It's very nice.
I had a nap yesterday, at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Naps are great.
I almost never have a nap. So before we get into talking video games, I need to tell you about my ordeal. A few episodes back, we had a conversation about me trying to set up my home office so that I could share a keyboard, share some devices through a USB switch between my Mac for work and my PC that I do all my other shit here, production work in the office. And I finally decided to pull the ripcord, order some parts. Nothing expensive. Like all told, it's, I don't know, $140, $160 worth of shit. I'm having to jump through some hoops because I don't have the new Mac yet for work. So it's an old Intel Mac that only has 2 USB-C ports, and one of them has to do power delivery to charge the device.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I need to also keep my USB-C to HDMI display pass through outside of my USB switch. So I needed to buy a dongle that would do power delivery while also giving me HDMI to go to my monitor. Then I needed to have the USB switch to go to the other USB port. That's going to have like camera, keyboard, mic, headset, shit like that on it. And that'll flip-flop those devices back and forth between the Mac and the PC. So I order that. I got myself a super budget mechanical keyboard. Sort of TKL sized. Has a mode switch to go between Mac and PC, so I'm not having to deal with like remapping my command keys and shit into different positions. I order it from Amazon. Next day delivery. Now, I order tons of stuff from Amazon, and I almost never have issues. I've been fortunate that I don't have or haven't had issues with porch pirates too much where I live, which is exactly the opposite of what you'd think would be the case. Now, anytime I order anything that I'm afraid to lose, I get it sent to like the post office at Shoppers Drug Mart or something. But I was going to be here now that I'm working from home, so I had it delivered here. And I get a delivery the next day. And it is a box with my name on the outside. I'm looking at the box and thinking, geez, this is a little bit small. Like, it's not a small box, but, you know, I was expecting the dimensions of one item to be a little bit more. And I open it, and it has another soft package inside it with a shipping label for somebody else in Quebec. Oh, maybe they reused some packaging or something. I decided to open that just to make sure, because it's like, oh, maybe they did a partial order, my dongles are in there or whatever. And I pull out, it was a 3-pack of notebooks and some like Glade plug-in scented like air freshener replacements. Nope. So I take pictures of that all, and I reach out to Amazon, and like, it's hard to even jump through the hoops to be speaking to a real person now.
Oh, it's almost impossible.
Jump in and it's like, oh, here's a live chat link. And then it's like 9 automated questions. And then you have to say, no, that doesn't help me. And then you have to say, no, I actually would rather chat with a person, please and thank you. And then they'll get you into live chat with someone. And the first person I spoke to was like, oh, that's odd. Let me talk to my lead. We'll figure out what we can do. And they were good enough to be able to offer a refund. Almost no questions asked. I said I took photos. Like, this is the live chat that doesn't have a tool for uploading photos to the chat. I'm like, if I paste links to these images in Dropbox, can you open them? They never even answered the question. They're like, nope. I'll talk to my lead. They're like, we can offer you a refund. We can either do it the original payment method, or we can apply digital gift card essentially to your account. And I said, let's do that, because that'll show up today and I can just reorder the same items. Like, I'm not fishing for a refund here. I want and need this stuff. So they applied that. It's great. Did not take too long at all. You could tell that they were probably English as a second language. So they were having a little difficulty with some of the questions that I was asking and the feedback that I was providing. But overall, the experience was reasonably positive. At this point, I thought, you know, okay, well, somebody at the fulfillment house just fucked up.
It happens.
They're making good on it. It's been a reasonable experience. So I wait 2 hours. I get the email that says that the gift card credits have been applied. And then I jump into the account. I see, yep, they're there. It's the amount that I expected to the cent. I went through and ordered the exact same items. Now, they're all, some of them are reseller items, but they are fulfilled by Amazon. Like, I will not, as a rule, buy anything that isn't fulfilled by Amazon.
Yeah, I won't either. There's occasionally times when, like, if it's, you go to like such and such a store and it's a big, well-known brand, then I'll do that. But yeah, like Joe Schmuck from Idaho, I'm sorry, bud, I'm not buying your stuff.
You know, and part of that is, I mean, I pay for Prime. I want to benefit from the free shipping anyway, so I will get something that ships via Prime, which means generally speaking, it's being fulfilled, if not sold, by Amazon. So that afternoon, I order the exact same items. It's like, yep, it'll be here by 10 p.m. tomorrow. And again, there's going to be a keyboard in a box. There's going to be a couple of USB devices in a box. There's also going to be a laptop stand that you would put on your desk that just sort of elevates it, tips it. Fairly large item, you know, not expensive, like just $20 or something like that, but bulky enough that you expect a certain type of packaging when you get it. I happen to be outside doing some yard work in the evening, like just after work, expecting the driver to come by, and he hands me a package that is not much bigger than an envelope. Soft Amazon plastic package. And I'm like, is that it? And he's like, that's all we've got. Why? I'm like, well, I'm expecting more. Are you sure you don't got another package in there? And he's like, nope. Possible that it's with another driver. Now, this was an Amazon guy, this driver. The first order had been fulfilled through, we have another local delivery company that they'll do stuff with.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like even the same driver order to order where I was, you know, questioning that, oh, maybe somebody's screwing this up on like the last mile or whatever. And I open it and it's got a single small package that is like a mesh toy hammock.
Okay.
The kind of thing that, like, if you had young children, you might hang in their room so that they can stuff toys in them, almost like a toy box to get them off of the wall.
Okay. Yep. I
You know,
that
it
kind
almost
you mean.
looks like a pet toy. You know, it's probably worth like $8, right?
Yep.
Like, you got to be fucking kidding me at this point. So when I got the package and realized that it was like super small, I'm like, these people are fucking with me now. Before I opened the package, I was taking pictures, I was taking video. I jumped back into chat. The person that I jump into chat with is nowhere near as helpful as the first person I spoke to. And they basically referred me to an email address that was obviously automated how they handle most of their return shit. And the idea is that I needed to send pictures to this email account so that they could investigate, and then that account would provide me instructions. So I do that. And you have to like either write by hand or print out a piece of paper that has like the account holder's name on it, today's date, like a bunch of information to validate the images are legit. It's like taking a picture with a newspaper, right?
Yep.
I do
Proof
that.
of life.
Yeah. And I ask at the end of the chat, like, can I also submit information about the previous order? I got refunded for it already, so I'm not looking for anything, but I think it might be important for you guys to investigate what's going on. Obviously, at this point, somebody in the fulfillment center is like either just willfully negligent or intentionally like scooping items or something, right?
Or there's a wire crossed, because it's all like there's a lot of robotic and automated shit for it, right? So somebody's got like a barcode tagged wrong, so they're scanning the thing and going, well, this is what it says it's supposed to be. I don't have time to go looking.
You know, when it was supposed to be 4 different items, though, like I'm thinking probably suspicious more than negligent at this point. And I provide all the information, and then I get an automated email. And the automated email is the same email that absolutely everybody that's applying for an Amazon return is going to get. It's package up your stuff, send it here. We'll inspect it to make sure that the items match the original order. And I'm like, fuck. So they're not taking any of the information I've provided them. They think I'm just going to return it. If I send these items that they have sent me in, they're going to think I'm trying to rip them off.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat on it for a couple of days because I was really pissed off at this point. I fired a few emails, jumped into another chat just to be like, look, guys, I just need some assurances here. Again, I don't want to rip you off. If you can not refund me the money and just resend me the same items, I'll be happy with that. Like, it's not like I'm buying a $3,000 TV here multiple times and trying to get free shit.
Right.
It's less than a couple $100 worth of stuff. If I was trying to scam them, I wouldn't be doing it this way. And nobody gave me any assurances at all. It was just respond to that email. I respond to the email. I get the same automated reply back about returns. Well, fuck. I was going to try and escalate the case again somehow. I was actually going to have they have an option to request a phone call and have somebody
Okay.
call you. And that morning I was going to do it and I didn't. And then I let the dog out one afternoon. This is like 4 days later. And I noticed a package on the front step that, imagine like an Amazon package goes through the events of the Hangover movies. Like not one of them, all of them. This package has seen some shit. There's holes in it. It's been opened and retaped. It's got an inside out packaging label on it that isn't mine, that has been covered over with paper and then taped over again. It's got about 14 different stickers, which when I did some research, I guess the stickers are basically every time a driver touches that package, they put a sticker on it.
Yep.
That are in about 3 or 4 different colors. There's like 14 of them. All my items were there. Now, I don't know if that was from the order that I already got refunded for or the second order, because it didn't include the packing slip in it, didn't include any of that information. But I got the items that I needed eventually. And now I have to contact them again to be like, hey, the items eventually came, so I'm no longer asking for a refund. Do you really want me to send these items back to you? Because like of all the items that I was incorrectly sent, there might be $30 or $40 worth of stuff there max, like probably not enough to cover the cost of the return shipping plus like inspection.
Well, repacking costs money.
Yep.
It's going to, probably not.
And I want to make sure that like they don't have my account flagged now so that when I fail to do the return or whatever happens, or they get the return and see it's not the items that were on the order, that they're not flagging my account for like bad shit. It's been a fucking nightmare, man. And I know that like this, we talked about it in Discord a little bit. This is what you get when you're dealing with A, monopolies, B, big business in general.
Yep.
And I can't even, the items I ordered aren't items that are available locally. And I know that's what the first thing's going to, buy locally owned, support your local people. They don't sell this shit, man.
I would if they did, but the thing is that if they do actually supply it, the problem is that a lot of the times, like when you buy it locally, they've ordered it from Amazon or Temu and they're selling it to you at a markup because that's the cheapest place they can get it and they need to make a profit too.
Yeah.
This to me is the kind of thing that I would like to talk about on our, more serious channel. Because I have some things to say, and none of the things that I have to say are unique or novel or even really insightful or deep. It's just a rehash of the same shit, right? Like Amazon didn't do anything revolutionary. They just had deep enough pockets to sell at a loss until all their competition died. Sorry, that's not true. They did one thing and really novel, which is they brought everything together under one umbrella. Right. And they have everything wired super tight. The problem is that in order for them to, because they've never made a profit, like Amazon, the online sale company has never actually made money. It exists so that they can do Amazon Web Services, which does make a profit.
You have to be careful in how you say that, because what they do, I mean, they would, based on their services, turn a profit, but they just dump that money back into growth and buying out other shit, expanding sort of their own in-house brands by, working deals like that, all that Amazon basic stuff, for instance. So
Sure. But they would make a profit if they weren't spending all of their money choking out all of their competition.
Yes.
But it would still be a very small profit because everything is very, very close to the bone. And in addition to being like we've all heard the stories about, like if you work in the warehouse, you have to walk 15 miles a day and piss in a bottle because you got no time. Everything is to the second. It's the same thing with drivers. It's the same thing with people in shipping places. I guarantee you that the malice that you're seeing from your package being the wrong thing in the box is not somebody going, I'm going to steal your stuff. It's I need to make up my piece per hour count or I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to throw things in boxes and hope they get it in the right place so that I can catch up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's my personal opinion. It may not be true. I don't know. I also order a lot of stuff from Amazon, and I wish I didn't.
And I think that's the common reaction, though, right? But I think about back in the days where, like, have you ever done, like, you're old enough to have done Sears catalog stuff back in the
Yes.
day where you would literally
Yep.
go into a,
Or consumers distributing. Yes, I
yeah,
have. Where they have one on the shelf. You can look at it, but you can't take it. You order one and they'll send it to you.
if they had wood on the shelf. A lot of times you were doing it just blind. And
Yeah.
like they would have dedicated for, I don't know how prevalent Sears in the US did this, but in Canada, like it was a big thing where if you wanted those type of goods and you lived in small rural towns, like
Which I
you would
did.
walk into a building that literally had a desk and that was it. There was books on it and one person standing behind it. That was the entirety of the office. You'd have catalogs that you could look up, you could place and pay for an order. Things would get delivered there and you would pick it up weeks later.
I can go you one better. We didn't even actually have the store. The store was more than an hour's drive away. It was a little over 50 miles down dirt roads. So most of the time, we didn't even get the desk. We filled out a card in the back of a catalog, put a check in an envelope with that card, and sent it.
Mm-hmm.
And they would send it. They would send it to our local post office.
Now, the reason I bring this up is because these issues happened then as well.
Sure.
Right, where the only people that you have any sort of face time with are so disconnected from the products and the transaction and the business that they're just not in a position to provide you with any assistance whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the part of this that I'm like, was most frustrated with. And I've worked customer service jobs where half the employees were utterly useless around me, right?
I've worked customer service jobs where I was useless.
Absolutely. As more and more of the things that we buy fall into these models, I just don't know how sustainable this is. And it isn't, I'm complaining about Amazon. It is not an Amazon problem. Buy anything from anybody online and you have the exact same issues.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, let's relate this back to, do you remember when WoW went to cross-server?
Mm-hmm.
And your reputation suddenly mattered less?
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're getting to with online retailers. There's so many, they're so varied, they're so big. And honestly, there aren't a lot of options if you want to order things from Amazon. Like I look at things like I don't have a local hardware store I can go and get nuts and bolts and washers and things. Right? I mean, I can order that sort of stuff from McMaster Car and it will cost me $30 million. Or I can order it from Amazon, and it's cheap. It's cheap junk that was made in a factory somewhere with not a lot of quality control, but it's generally good enough for my purposes.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only place I can get it. So what do? I mean, like I've been thinking a lot about in Canada specifically because there's I don't know if you've heard, but there's a Loblaws boycott going on,
and there should be.
And all of the stores that Galen Weston owns, and of course their sort of propaganda around it or advertising or whatever, their PR people are all like, oh, it's not affecting us at all. But it is, because otherwise they wouldn't say anything. But there's all kinds of things like that. Like Bell Media is basically a monopoly in the sort of digital delivery of internet, phone, yada, yada. Like their competition is not really competition. It's, compatriots as opposed to competitors.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe the differentiation we need to make is like you look at Bell and it isn't technically a monopoly. It's
Close
usually
enough.
part of a duopoly or triopoly type things, but you don't need to be an actual monopoly. Emphasis on mono to be anti-competitive and anti-consumer.
And the thing is that like you can be a monopoly as long as you're not evil. The problem is that it's run by humans, and humans are evil. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about this kind of thing, and their response kind of surprised me. It was an older gentleman, a guy that I golf with, and we were talking about blah blah blah, and because I knew that the Loblaws thing was coming up, so I mentioned. He's like, "Yeah, there's so many things in Canada that are monopolies or close to monopolies, but our market isn't big enough for the kind of competition that you see, for example, in the European Union or in the United States or various other places around the world. So we really do need a lot more regulation. Like monopolies can work. And like as part of the capitalist model, as long as there's appropriate brakes on the train, right? Like you can't let the monopoly run downhill without putting the brakes on a little bit with regulations to say you also have to take care of your customers. Yeah, and this I think this comes into the idea that AI is going to be running a lot more stuff too. So, like, what do we do about that?
I mean, at the rate that AI is developing, I'm looking forward to a better customer service experience eventually. Honestly.
I'm worried about being able to afford to be a customer, though. Because I got to have a job in order to have money to buy things for that service to matter to me. And I don't necessarily, I think that the anti-consumerist movement is a thing that's taking off as well, that I kind of like the idea of. Like the number of things that I look at on a daily basis and have like this overt urge to consume a thing. It's like, oh, it's shiny and fancy and I want one, but I don't need it. The only reason I want it is because someone has told me that I want it. And I'm smart enough to realize that that's happening, but I'm not smart enough to catch it before I spend my money some of the time.
Yeah, that holds a little water. I don't think that's probably a good blanket way to look at things. Like, I look at some of the things that I want, and it's obviously I've been advertised to and marketed to over the years, but I'm also savvy enough to keep myself pretty sheltered from all of that shit, even though I work in the industry. You know, the things I want, generally want because I've decided that I want them.
I'm not trying to suggest that the only reason that we consume is because we're marketed to. But it is a force that exists.
Sure.
And if you think about, like, dumb people buy a lot of shit. Right? Like, I look around at the smartest people that I know, and they generally buy, like, no-name brand or off-brand, or, you know, middle-of-the-road type stuff, and they look at, like, price versus quality. And I look at dumb people, and they go, ooh, I like that brand name. It's 4 times as much money, but I don't care because it's stamped by Jean-Claude Van Damme or somebody. Right? Eddie Bauer's a good one. Eddie Bauer's name is on a lot of stuff. Some of it's good stuff, and some of it's crap.
Yeah.
But some people will go, oh, it's Eddie Bauer. It's good. It's the best. Top of the line. High end.
But that name might have meant something, 70 years ago. But, like, people have bought and traded the name just to lend credibility to shit 9 million times since then, right?
Right. And that's my point, is that, like, there's some things that we need. Like, for example, like when I want a bag of apples, I want a bag of apples. Nobody needs to advertise to me. I'm not going to choose that based on what advertising I've seen on TV. But when I think about a cheeseburger, sometimes the craving comes and I'm like, do I really want a McDonald's cheeseburger? Like, they're crap. I can make one at home in less time than it takes me to drive to McDonald's. It's cheaper, it's better, and it's healthier. So why do I want a McDonald's cheeseburger? Right? And some of it's because I don't want to cook, I don't want to do dishes, I don't want to clean up, blah, blah, blah. But the point still stands.
In my case, a lot of it is just, I really like crap sometimes. I know this is objectively garbage, and I'm going to savor every minute of it. It is exactly what I need and want in this moment. Like, biologically speaking, my body has conditioned to need this.
Yeah. You're addicted.
Yes.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I go and eat at Taco Bell just about every time I hit Belleville. So,
objectively, the worst food you'll get.
You know what? I take issue with that. I'm not sure it's food.
Come on, you don't like your dog food paste mixed with a little edible plastic pasteurized processed cheese food product?
I think the cheese might be the closest thing to food in any of that. Because I think they actually do use something that was originally something close to cheese.
At one point in time.
At one point in time. Not anymore. Oh no, it's been plasticized and pasteurized and pontificated until it's no longer actually food. We're out of secret sauce. Quick, leave this mayonnaise in the sun.
There's eldritch rituals that are less complicated than the process of making that cheese.
It's a meat process.
Hey, do you want to talk about some video games?
Let's do that.
I used to be an adventurer like you.
Stay a while and listen.
Guess what?
Chicken butt?
I've actually played some video games for the first time in several months.
Oh, well, that's good because I have nothing to talk about. I haven't turned on my computer in at least a month.
Okay. I mean, I get that you're busy.
It's not even really that. It's one of those things that I've been wondering, am I depressed? Because I think about it at the end of the day. I think, should I turn on my computer and maybe finish Baldur's Gate? Nah, I'll just go watch TV.
It's been like that actually for me for the past few days. Like I've been watching a lot of Tanya and I have been going through Fringe. I just binged in like a week and a half my way through The Expanse again. And finally got around to I've been wanting to play the sequel to Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, since it came out. I was looking forward to it, but it's like, I'm not looking forward to it so much that I'm going to buy it. It wasn't a game that was ever made available on the open seas. So I waited and waited and waited, and finally in the past week it popped up on Xbox Game Pass. I still subscribe to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate Edition, which gives me their PC games, plus I can stream their console shit. My daughter has our Xbox, and she uses the hell out of it, so I'm like, whatever, $18 a month, I'll just pay it. I'll get that value as a rule myself when I'm actually playing video games, and she's playing the hell out of it. So I didn't have to buy it. I'm already paying the sub. It popped up. I installed it. I started playing it. And I have some thoughts.
Are they good thoughts? Or are you succumbing to the dark side?
Ha 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 ha. I need like a new stinger that's just like a womp womp or like boo, boo, hiss.
Well, I think we could probably steal something from the Princess Bride. Boo,
Boo!
hiss. Yeah. Or you could just grab Jabba the Hutt's laugh. Ha, 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 ha.
Yeah. The game's been fine. I would say even good. It's had some issues. Some of them are with the game itself. There's been bugs that have been there since it launched on PC a year ago, 13 months ago, I think, that haven't been addressed.
Why would you? They've got your money.
I mean, there are people that actually buy this game and make informed decisions based on things like these types of issues that crop up online. I mean, you can give gamers one thing, they can be a very vocal minority when they're pissed off. The one issue that I'm running into is that for some reason with my setup, and it doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens frequently enough that like I'm not a 1 in a million case here. Every time I open up the game and launch it, it has to go through the process of recompiling shaders, which even on my beefy-ish machine takes like 2-3 minutes. And normally when you would launch a game and it does that, like sometimes it'll do that once, and unless the hardware changes or the game updates, it won't have to do it again. And as a result, I have to go through that time every time I launch the game to wait and get through it. And then it obviously is not getting through the process successfully because I definitely run into like stuttering issues in game where I can tell that it is probably on the fly, sort of compiling shaders when like things are transitioning from zone to zone and stuff. So I'd like to get that figured out, but whatever. By the time I figure it out, I'll be done playing the game. The other thing that I'm running into is that the video card that I have, not a high-end one, it's a RTX 4060. So in terms of like raw horsepower, it's probably still a rung lower than yours. But it does have support for some features that the 30 series cards don't, and one of them is the DLSS 3 frame generation, which is sort of the AI, let me sort of look at these frames and guess what I should have in the middle and try and smooth out the experience. It doesn't do anything to improve latency or responsiveness. It can actually hurt that if you care. But in terms of smoothing out frame rates, it can help. The trade-off being minimal visual artifacts. I have it disabled in the settings, and I am 100% convinced it's still running. When my game isn't stuttering, my frame rates are much higher than I think they should be. And I notice the sort of telltale, like weird ghosting issues when I quickly move the camera that come with the frame generation. And along the edge of the frame, the weird sort of artifacting that can happen when it's like, I'm trying to guess what should be here and I have no fucking clue. right?
Mm-hmm.
I can see that that's happening. I'm not running any upscaling or anything else. I have this disabled. It shouldn't be running, and I'm convinced it is. So that's kind of annoying too. But overall, minor quips. The one thing I really wanted to bring up talking about this game is how much it's making me feel recognized in myself that I'm getting old.
Welcome to the club.
For weird reasons, though. So for some context, I've never been a big fan of heights.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been some games that I've played in history that make me a little bit queasy with vertigo. Now it's weird because it all has to do with immersion. Because like I can play, a game where I'm flying and I know I'm flying and it doesn't bother me. Like I could be, flying through exactly the same area that I'm walking. And then none of that tension about, looking down and worried about falling or any of that. That all goes away. So it isn't purely the mechanics of optics and on a big monitor and stuff like that. I know we talked about that a little bit with Cindy playing on bigger screens. I'm playing on the same 32-inch, which is a fairly big monitor, 16 by 9. It's only 1080p. Screen I've been playing on for 5-6 years now. And this problem in the past couple of years is noticeably worse for me. Now, for those of you that have played the first game, the Jedi Fallen Order, a big part of the mechanics were kind of like force augmented parkour, where you're doing a lot of jumping, you're doing a lot of wall running, you're doing a lot of flipping. It's got that sort of Tomb Raider-y, Uncharted-y kind of like a lot of environmental things that I'm going to be swinging off of and climbing on and hanging from and doing weird shit.
Mm-hmm.
That was a significant part of the first game, but it wasn't the whole thing. And I'm not playing this game for those mechanics. I mean, they're kind of cool. Like it definitely feels more platformery than a lot of action adventure-y kind of games do. And I don't mind that. Like I like a good platformer. But they are leaning hard into the empty chasms and okay, you're not literally falling into infinity, but like you might as well be. That shit that you see is so far down. The first sequence of the game, this isn't a spoiler, takes place on Coruscant, right? So for those of you that are into Star Wars, Coruscant is like a city the size of a planet that is built on top of a city the size of a planet that is built on top of a city the size of the planet. It's got layers, right? Like there's so much verticality to it.
It's like an onion.
Yeah, think buildings on top of buildings on top of buildings higher than the clouds. And you've got Coruscant. And I'm literally jumping between them and floating billboards. And it's like they took that scene out of, was it the second prequel where Anakin jumps out of the cab?
Yep.
And they said, well, what if we create a 2.5-hour segment of a video game that is all that?
Sounds like a lot of fun as long as you're not afraid of heights and don't have vertigo.
Oh, dude. Like I get the sweats playing it. Like I'm it's borderline where I'm enjoying it, but it's also like I have to play this in smaller doses than I used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it funny because more than ever, studios are leaning into accessibility and doing things like, hey, we're going to put some work into a colorblind mode. Hey, what is it? The game that just recently come out. It wasn't the WoW sequel. Yeah, it is the WoW sequel, I think, that they're talking about, that they're developing an arachnophobe mode, right? Where it's like, oh, we got a lot of spiders in this, but you don't like spiders? Click this checkbox and we'll turn them into something else.
There's a WoW sequel?
It's another expansion. They got like 3 expansions announced at the same time that are all sort of a part of it. I haven't looked into details too much, but my understanding of the one that's coming up is it's very much leaning into like the Drow and Strider kind of thing, but Warcraft's version of that. But anyway, I find it funny that they're putting so much effort into that kind of stuff, right? And then at the same time, they're like, you know what the most common fear people have? Heights. Fuck those guys. We're going to build an entire game that's designed to make you vomit.
There's a funny thing about a lot of people who have a fear of heights, though. I mean, I see where you're coming from, and I get it. Like, how do you fix that? I don't like the other things are fixable more or less easily, and I think that one probably isn't. But the weird thing, a lot of people who have a fear of heights is that if their feet are touching the ground, the fear goes away. Like, it's bizarre.
Yeah. Mine is a little bit weird. Like, don't get me wrong. I used to go on roller coasters and weird stuff. And I have like a weird sort of middle ground. If I go beyond it, I'm fine. Like, it's just so ridiculously high that like my brain just is like, whatever. Like, it's infinity at this point.
It's not real.
But there's anything from top of a ladder height to 3 trees. If I'm anywhere in there and I'm fucked, man. It just, and it's gotten so much worse with age. I literally feel my internal organs drop into my legs. It isn't even a fear. I'm not afraid. I feel ill, you know?
Yeah. That's a phobia. They're not rational. I mean, that's really the whole point of a phobia is that they're not rational.
So anyway, I'm playing a video game that is all that because I'm an idiot. And because I'm a nerd and it's Star Wars and I want to milk the story out of it, but I could just watch a fucking YouTube playthrough and fast forward through the traversal bits, but I want to do it myself.
I wonder how far, because like, here's an interesting sort of side topic. Like, we have YouTube streamer let's play type stuff where people watch other people play video games. And like, we're all somehow starved for content. How far are we from there being a studio where they make movies of video game playthroughs, where like the movie is, or it's presented like a movie? Here's a playthrough all stitched together and cut together with how we wanted to. Imagine if you played like Jumpman Jr. as a movie. You go, well, I failed that. All right, we'll cut that out of the edit. I failed that. We cut that out of the edit. I succeeded. That goes in the edit. You know what I mean? Because they did a similar kind of idea with, was it Hardcore Henry, I think was the movie? They filmed the whole thing in first person as a giant supercut. I don't think it did very well. But I can imagine, especially if you did that kind of thing as a short form presentation, it might actually be reasonably successful. Got to find a way to add, someone talking over it or narrating it or a sportscaster type person to make that part of it happen.
That kind of content is so readily available at an amateur level, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I wonder if there would be any demand for that kind of like professionally done. I have to pay money to consume this above and beyond like the normal shit watching somebody play on Twitch. And
it would start off by not being monetized until all of the amateurs stopped doing it, and they'd make their money through streamed in ad placements where you run past a billboard saying consume, buy. And then once all the competition dies, then you start, adding in ad breaks and charging people, subscription fees. That's what you do.
So going back to your lack of playing video games, you were so excited for Horizon Forbidden West. You got it for your birthday. I know for a fact that you installed it and played like at least a few minutes of it. Then you went back to finish your 73rd Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough that you never finished.
Yep.
And you haven't gone back to it.
I haven't. I am going to finish Baldur's Gate. I just have to get there. I mean, we traveled this weekend. I have to travel again next weekend because we're having a little family reunion kind of thing. And by the time I get finished with a workday, honestly, I don't feel like sitting in front of my computer anymore. In the winter I do, because I don't want to go outside. It's cold. But now it's like, it's nice out. I want to go do stuff. Or at very least sit in front of the TV and do nothing.
So here's a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're not a big game controller guy. You've got your old laptop still that is, playable for some games.
Yep.
Why don't you hook that up to your TV, grab a game controller, and try playing that way where you can flake out on the couch?
I would have to negotiate with my wife before I could do that. By the time we get to that point, she's right now actually sitting in front of the TV and watching, because at the end of the day, she does not want to do anything else either. It's funny. My wife is retired and she works harder than anyone else I know. She's up at like 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning and she doesn't stop until 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. And then she just basically stops. So it's an idea. I thought about it, but yeah,
Yeah.
it'll happen. It's just probably not going to be, it's not a priority over the course of the summer. That's all.
Speaking of things that are not a priority over the course of the summer, do you want to talk about our tabletop games?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Let's start with, when are we going to play again, dude?
I don't know. We're at least on semi-hiatus at the moment. I need to do some writing. I haven't gotten to it. I've got to do some stuff for Chris. I've got to do some stuff for you. I have to figure out where we're going next, and I think I've almost got that, but I need to write some stuff down. I need to figure some stuff out. I have some interesting ideas about things that I want to do sort of on the side to keep people interested. Little bits of presentations to be done outside of the table. But when are we playing again? Well, the answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. 42. I honestly don't know. Not this weekend. Probably not next weekend. Hopefully the weekend after that.
You're putting too much pressure on yourself to write. Throw us in a dungeon, man.
Well, the dungeon is coming. But there's some stuff to go before the dungeon because there is an overarching story. But I need to also throw, because I realized in the vein of table talk, I realized that I have made one of the cardinal errors of DMs in that up until now, evil has been monolithic. You literally have one big bad and not really a whole lot else going on, and I need to fix that because that makes things a little bit monotonous.
Okay, well, tell us about that a little bit then. Like, what is the problem with that? Why do you think that's an issue?
Well, it's a problem because it means that it makes the world feel really flat. Like it's fine if you have one sort of bad guy and it's a local thug.
Mm-hmm.
So you start off as like level 3 NPC or level 3 PCs, and your opponent is a local bandit who's terrorizing farms. It's fine for everything that you encounter or everything that you do, all of the tasks that you have to be associated with that bandit. It doesn't make sense to be, for example, okay, so our opponent is the god Vecna. Okay, every bad guy that we ever encounter is somehow associated with Vecna. Well, now that's kind of boring.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not that it's a problem, it's that it makes things, it lacks depth. Right? And there's lots of other stuff that is there that I haven't really presented as an adversary for the group. So I just need to find a way to introduce you guys to the stuff in addition to, Matthew and Mock, who wants to reduce the world to rubble in order to invite some extraplanar being to come and occupy your world. There's other people who are also doing things, and maybe you need to see some of that. Yeah, it's a question of depth as opposed to a question of it's wrong.
What I would say is that we're not far enough into that campaign that it matters at this point, I don't think.
Not a lot, no. But I do want to give you some sort of, and we talked about this before too, a little bit more of a short-term and medium-term stuff,
mm-hmm.
Right? Some stepping stones to get to the epic stuff. Right, so you've been introduced to this is the epic bad guy, as far as you know. But you need to have something besides like, hey, I'm a peewee hockey player and I'm going to jump into the NHL. Like you need to go through all of the various steps and stages. That's the whole point of leveling. You don't fight the very biggest of bad guys right at the beginning.
Nice.
Yeah.
My game is still going. And we've had an interesting sort of turn of events. Interesting is in air quotes here. Not because what happened is particularly interesting, but it is something that's sort of been a unique singular thing that has happened in my game that I like the way I handled it. I don't think I handled it in a way that would be described as poor or anti-player or anything like that. My players have, like, as players have responded to it one way, and as characters have responded to it another way, which is fine. It's been tense. I had them in this mega dungeon thing for several sessions now, and they sort of got to the end of it. And the person that's at the end of it is one of those sort of mid-level bad guys. He might be like loosely related to, like, this is just a city that's got all sorts of just bad shit going on, right? Like, there's obviously the bit of a pyramid in terms of who controls what, the power centers in this city, but everybody's kind of got their own side games going on. And the impetus for them jumping into this dungeon that they were in for weeks and weeks and weeks was they didn't know where they wanted to go. So I said, hey guys, I'm going to railroad you. I don't like doing this, but rather than try and prep 7 different things, the first little bits of it, and it's okay that you don't know where you want to go next. You've got a lot of options. I've thrown a shitload at you. This is what we're going to do. I role played out something just sort of between sessions that one of the players saw something and they're like, we're going to deal with this now. So the group followed this cart that was carrying some captives into this area, which eventually led them down into this dungeon. And they spent weeks and weeks and weeks doing a dungeon crawl, which is in and of itself something that's a little bit unique for my game. Being able to spend a lot of time with dungeony and roguey type mechanics, letting our rogue be a rogue. And that sort of played itself out well. And then they get to almost the culmination of this dungeon where they're dealing with, like, this guy's main henchman. And they overextended themselves. They decided to not get some rest. They were not playing conservatively. They knew they weren't doing it. They're like, as players, are like, oh, we're going to regret this. We should probably stop and rest, but nah. So in character, they're inventing rationale. And what I need to set up is when they got the second sort of big area in this dungeon, they found like a little prison full of cells. It was adjacent to almost like a small fighting pit.
Mm-hmm.
And they found the tiefling captives that they were following into here, and they released them from the prison, but like this whole area is still filled with bad guys. So they basically said, why don't you stay here? If you don't hear from us in the next few hours, the way we came in is a shit show, right? Like, it was a maze and the basilisks that they had that encounter with that I described. And it's traps and traps and traps and traps. But they did a really good job, and they rolled really well for describing, like, this is the way out. If you don't hear from us, you probably want to try and escape. You're free, but it's probably safest for you to wait here. And they continued on in the dungeon, left the tieflings by the cells, unlocked, unshackled, hiding out there while they cleared the area. They got their asses mostly handed to them because they overextended themselves, almost intentionally. And then they made the decision, you know what? We just need to get out of here. We can't go back for the tieflings.
Oh, my.
There's no way we'll be able to do it. We will not survive that. And in character, they're arguing with each other about this. And then they finally, a couple of them are upset, but they're like, yep, I guess, whatever. We got to do it. We'll come back in here and get them. But they decided to leave without them. So the greater discussion point here, we always talk about DMing with your party and having to adjudicate consequences for the party's actions. But rarely does the conversation of consequences for the party's inactions ever come up.
It's hard to keep track of. There's too many things that all parties just don't do.
Yeah, now what I will want to say to anybody that's a potential DM listening, this is not an excuse to be like, oh, I gave you clues to something that was happening 4 sessions ago and you just didn't get it, so now this entire town's destroyed. And all those NPCs that you cared about are dead because, you either didn't pick up on what I was putting down or didn't realize it was important. That's not what I'm talking about here.
No, and if you're going to do that, then what you should do is you should trick your PCs into slaughtering the whole town.
Yes, that is no, do not fucking do that at all. That was fucking horrible. You're a monster.
Yes, it's only good once.
No, that was great because there was this overwhelming doubt and gut wrenching possibility that loomed over us for probably 6 or 7 sessions afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that wasn't real, right? That wasn't real. There's no way that was real. That wasn't real. And then we find out 7 sessions later or whatever. Oh no, it was real. Strahd was fucking with you.
Yep.
Now you need to live with that. It was fine. It was
thematically appropriate.
It was. But I've heard, DMs, it's like, oh, you're not taking my story seriously and I'm going to make you pay for that.
Yeah,
and that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about you put a very obvious decision in front of your players and they consciously as a group choose inaction, which you could argue is action in and of itself. Given their situation, they've opted to leave rather than go back and help those tieflings.
Yes.
One thing that I've started doing in situations like that, where something bad could happen as a result of actions, not so much inactions, is I'll just have somebody in the party roll a D100. And I'll just take whatever that number is and sort of, that's my knob for how much am I going to fuck them for this? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And as a rule, I don't set any hard numbers, but if it's low, I'll make them feel it. Right. If it's a high number, I will kind of let them get away with it. So if on a D100 they rolled an 87, maybe what would have happened is most of the tieflings managed to escape, but somebody in their party was lost. They maybe have to deal with, well, we did our best. We managed to save most of them. That's much better than if we hadn't have gone in there at all.
Mm-hmm.
They rolled a 3. So I played it out a little bit as if they could hear a scream off in the distance as they were echoing, because that's where we were ending our session, just so that they could, sleep on it. This is what you've done. You hear a scream. You don't know what the scream means. Backing up a little bit, one of the things that I'd sort of set up by accident in this dungeon, I was using a map that had a little bit of a fighting pit in it. So when they got down to the little prison area where the tieflings were, I set it up so that one of the bad guys, one of the henchmen, had one of the tieflings in this ring and was goading him into fighting. I also had just reused a bunch of NPCs, adventuring NPCs from various modules. I generally, unless I need specific names, I will reuse names. I think we've talked about this before, where I have to say to my players, look, don't read into the names. You might recognize some of these names. Whatever it is you think you know about these characters, you don't. It's literally a stat block and a name. Everything about them is my own shit. But I found a bunch of NPCs that had interesting names like Razor Blast and Mercy Killer Bloodhound. And there was this fighting ring. So I'd always intended that, why were these people capturing these captives, right? I wasn't just going to lean into, oh, they're turning them into slaves or they're putting them to work for the Dark God or whatever. I wanted to do a few different things with it.
Bad guys are bad.
Yeah, bad guys are bad. So based on the combination of names and the fact that there just happened to be a fighting pit on the map, here's what I did. They managed to make their way in escaping this dungeon back into the city. They made their way back to their base of operations where they tried, despite their guilty conscience, to get some rest and plan what to do next. When they wake up the next day, they sleep in late. The inn, there's a lot of bustle about the city and the inn in particular. People are talking about some sort of event that's going to be taking place. Getting excited about it. They're getting vague hints of what this event might be. Some sort of annual festival, some sort of sporting event. Some people are calling it blood sport type thing. And towards the end of the session, because they were just hanging about the inn trying to figure out what they were doing, kind of where they were going to go next, I had them sort of like a bunch of people piling into the inn, like filled to the brim. And then some guys were coming in and setting up some strange equipment. And I don't need to get too wordy about what it is, but essentially what these guys were doing was setting up a magical projector that filled the center of the room like a big screen TV, broadcasting an event that was being broadcast through the city. The event was, think The Running Man.
Okay, yep.
Mixed with a little bit of a like an American Gladiators, but like the blood sport version of it.
Oh my God, is it your party being filmed going through the dungeon? Because that'd be hilarious.
Not yet. It might be based on what goes here. But I move them away. Like, so in Foundry, I switch scenes. And if you've played with any of the visual effects stuff that Foundry has, it has some like filters and stuff you can run, some weather effects that come from like FX Master. One of the effects is called Predator. That's supposed to simulate predator vision, but actually it just makes it almost look like a pixelated TV. And then I had a bunch of other effects that made it look like fireworks were going off in the room. So they switch into this room. It looks like they're watching a TV broadcast from the point of view of some camera in this empty room. Fireworks are going off. The theme song for American Gladiators starts playing. And then I do this whole thing where I'm an announcer introducing. So the bad guy that they were going after, it's like Lord Thraxus is honored to present season 11 of Blood and Glory. And it's, TLDR, this goes on. They realize it's blood sport. It's distasteful. It's like there's betting that's tied to it. So the people that are going into these inns are like collecting money. They're bookies as well. So we're playing it all out. Some of them not knowing what was going to happen. My players literally, as much as I telegraphed this, didn't know what was going to happen. They bet in favor of the house against the competitors. So I'd set it up so that, and they should have known, because it was like, before they got into the event, we announced the retirement of some of last season's gladiators, and it was the name of some of the people that they'd killed in the dungeon. And it was at that point they started to clue in, oh shit. And then they introduced the tieflings as the competitors for the first team to try and go through the gauntlet. Introduced them as, word has it they're from the fiery depths of the 9 hells. Devils, a lot of them. Betting on, like, are they even going to get out of the first room? And then they watch the tieflings that they failed to save all just get brutally slaughtered on live television, basically. So they got mad. They decided they weren't even going to rest it off. They busted back into the dungeon, because what I teased at the end of it, they came into this city with other NPCs. One of the players' mothers, and then like another group of 4 NPCs that were just traveling with them. And once they got into the city, they separated to try and, divide and conquer, do what they needed to do. So I didn't take the important character, the other player's mom, but I took the 4 other NPCs. And at the end of the broadcast, they teased tomorrow night's contestants, and the early betting window starts 4 hours before the event. And they saw their other NPC friends walk in. Pushed into this opening room of this gauntlet dungeon thing. So now they're busting back into that bad guy's place that they just fleed out of to try and either find him and deal with him, because like they had a couple of close encounters with him, conversation through a door before they decided to get the fuck out of there. They're going to go in. They're in the middle of trying to wreck his shit, and it is not going as well as they thought. So if they lose this encounter, they'll end up in the gauntlet themselves. If they win this encounter, they'll have to try and figure out how to get in there in time to maybe save their friends.
That's an interesting little bit of convoluted action.
It allowed me to do just some funny, goofy shit in Foundry, like literally just changing scenes. And it's like, why the fuck is the American Gladiators theme playing? Like a macro that was triggering the playlist, triggering the effects. It was so cheesy and so dumb, but at the same time, a kick to the crotch, right? And they all took it that way in character. As players, they loved it. But in character, all of the characters were really, really angry and sad and rash And as players, they were playing them out that way. So like they went back into this dungeon unprepared again. They didn't try to sneak around anymore. They're just going. They got 24 hours to figure this shit out now. And
You know what, though? It's a great way. I really do. Kudos to you, because I really like the way that you brought. Here's just a dungeon that I'm going to run you through because I don't have time to prepare anything, and then it becomes part of a much larger and more. I don't want to say complicated, but much bigger story.
mm-hmm.
You know, and that's a nice thing. When my games are going well, I love doing that, where the players do something and then I have like it sparks an idea where I go, oh, that means this happens now.
Yeah.
Right. And that is really nice when that happens. It's not frequent though.
No, but nothing ever has to be completely random and meaningless, right? Like that throwaway dungeon. When I'm saying, dude, just play in a session, don't worry about the story. Just throw us in a dungeon for some stuff. Like that might not feed the next thing that happened, but if something cool happens in there, players resonate with a particular thing or whatever, like that'll inform your own creativity moving forward. You don't always have to design and write and create in a vacuum.
No, for sure. And I don't want to, but there's like a couple of things that I don't need to have like the whole story written out, but I do like to have some sort of stepping stones for the next stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I'm struggling with a little bit right now. And a large part of that is because I'm really not leaning at all on existing IP. So that means that I have to make up everything and make sure it kind of fits. So, yeah, it's a little bit of, and it ties into that same thing where I'm just not playing video games right now, where like at the end of the day, my mental energy is zero.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice though. Like this is something that I have experienced in the past, right? Like I've gone into, I just don't have energy for anything because I hate my job. I hate blah, 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 and all of this. This is like the very mildest form of that, where it's just like, I just need some recuperation time. So it's coming. Like there's still some ideas there. I just want to write them down. But I love your story. I love it. I really want to play in this game, but I know I don't have time for that.
I was thinking that we should consider, and I know we probably don't have enough people listening to this podcast yet, but when we hit the next level, we should do, whether we ever opened it up to Patreon or just start a Discord or whatever for NUTI. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind running some mini sessions, like 3-4 session games that we can involve some listeners of the pod in.
Yeah. We probably have enough listeners for that if they were all interested.
Yeah.
Or if 50% of them were interested. You and me and Ian and Chris. That's enough.
If you're interested in running a game, participating in a game with us, one of us will run the game. Email us, podcast@nerdingundertheinfluence.com. And when I say email us, I mean it. This isn't a joke. This isn't for the memes. I would like to run some D&D games with new players, or participate as a player in some games with some new players. And it might as well be you. All you got to do is say, yeah, I'm in. We'll hook you up.
I'm in.
Did you have anything else table talk related you wanted to go over?
I don't think so. I do. I think I do want to say that I do have coming up in our game. I did actually grab a module that I'm going to go through. I'm modified heavily to fit in my world.
How dare you? Dude, that's totally fine.
I mean, I grabbed the maps. I grabbed a little bit of the story, sort of hook in some of the characters. There's a little bit of a tie-in to the overarching story. So once I get over the hump of I got to go through all of my original stuff to get to this thing, then things ought to take off and branch out. So that's what I got to say about that.
I'm looking forward to punching something, whatever it is.
I'll throw together some kind of a dungeon. We'll do something week after next.
All right. Let's get to some parting gifts. I said a couple episodes ago that I was going to get something, and I totally didn't. I spaced on it, so I want to talk about it today.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Anybody want a peanut?
Before I do, however, do you have anything you would like to share with our listeners?
Parting gift wise, off the top of my head, I started listening to Canada Land. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a podcast. Some famous broadcaster, newspaper journalist guy started doing it. I'm on the fence about it. I think I'm 3 or 4 episodes in, and I'm not sure I'm on board with it. The only reason that I'm still listening to it is because the very first episode he interviewed some old dude who was the famous journalist guy. Like, I don't follow this kind of stuff, and I'm trying to actually expand my horizons, so I'm listening to stuff I typically wouldn't. And he started off by saying, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I need to do something, so I'm going to try and see what works and what doesn't. So it's probably going to be awful for a while, right? And I respect the hell out of that. I was looking for. So here's something that is an absolute shout out is the BBC show Have I Got News for You, which is basically, 4 comedians and a random host talking about it's a quiz show, but really it's just an excuse for them to get together and make fun of the news, right? American news, British politics and all of that kind of stuff. I was looking for something like that or something like Jon Stewart or John Oliver for Canadian stuff, because I don't really want to watch or listen to political news because it's boring as shit. Mm-hmm. And it's more often than not lies. I find that the people who are satirizing current events and politics often have a more honest and objectively more accurate view of what's really happening.
It's true.
And we don't really have that in Canada. I mean, we used to have like the Mercer Report. We used to have This Hour Has 22 Minutes. We had the Beaverton podcast for a while, but that's gone defunct. I mean, we do have the Beaverton, which is like a sort of online newspaper, which I would recommend. It's hilarious.
Think the Onion, but, Canadian.
Yeah. And we don't really have a lot of political satire in Canada. Some of it's because we're a small market and there's no money to be made there. But I think there's value in that. I mean, I'd love to do it, but I recognize that I don't have enough talent for it. So, anyway, Canada Land, kinda. I don't know. I'm getting into it. I hope it's good. That's a lot for not having anything. But
I was gonna say, you gave me shit a couple weekends ago for talking about podcasts, and you're like, "How do you have time to listen to them?" I've been listening to Behind the Bastards, and I'm going through their back catalog and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, well, I came across some work at work that didn't require 100% of my brain power, so I started listening to some stuff. And we went down, here's a story that I need to tell. I'm sorry, we're off of parting gifts. But Cindy inherited a 10-foot marlin from her dad when he passed away. Or a sailfish or one of those kind of things that he caught in Mexico in the 80s.
That was on the wall at the place that she was at there on Victoria Road. In the basement.
In Carrying Place, yes. It's that fish. So when we moved out of that place, I don't think it ever made it to the place in Trenton. But after that, we were in like the trailer. There was no room. We were in an apartment. There was no room. We were in another apartment. There was no room. We were in a 600 square foot house. There was no room. And now we've moved here and we have rooms. So I went to pick it up. The problem is it's a 3.5 or 4 hour drive and it's a 10-foot long fish. So we had to borrow a vehicle so that I could transport the fish, and then Cindy drove down in another vehicle. So I had a solid 9.5 hours where I was in a vehicle by myself with nothing to do. I listened to a lot of podcasts. So to all of you out there making podcasts, thank you for the content. Good, bad, or indifferent, I don't care. It's noise. I appreciate you.
Don't ever get rid of that fish either, because it attended our first LAN party.
True. It's true. It's going to be hanging in our house forever now.
All right. My parting gift, and this is one I meant to share last episode or a couple of episodes ago, is another podcast that I recommend everybody listen to. I absolutely fucking love it. It's dumb and silly, and it's, I think, exactly what everybody needs. The world is shit. This podcast is a ray of light. I won't say positivity, but an escape. It's called We Have Concerns. The hosts, Jeff Kanata, who is the main host of another podcast I've listened to for years, DLC, and Anthony Carboni. And I want you to imagine a podcast of two we'll say middle-aged dudes, probably white. But instead of being like us, they have talent and charisma. They're funny.
Oh, man. I'm jealous already.
You should be. Their shtick is that it's loosely a science podcast where they'll have a show topic that will be something scientific or science adjacent. Sometimes it's related to a scientific study or an article or something like that. But the topic is usually something that's kind of silly in and of itself. But they don't approach the topic head on. Most of it is like improv comedy around the topic. So the topic discussion itself moves very slowly as they're bantering and making jokes about the topic. The only thing that I can compare it to is, and it's nothing like Best of the Worst, Red Letter Media, but you know those Best of the Worst episodes where sometimes they'll like make their own canon for the shit that they're seeing? You see it a lot on the Black Spine stuff.
Yeah.
You know, where they develop this story around whatever it is that they're doing.
Why did they make this movie? I just can imagine. You know what? Their very first Christmas roundup is probably the greatest example of that.
Yeah.
Because they spend a whole bunch of time making up this story about a guy waking up on a beach with a whole bunch of dead children.
Yeah.
Which is horrible, but they make it funny.
They do. And this podcast, it isn't quite dark that way, but the mechanics of that are very, very similar. It would be the one guy, Anthony Carboni, he's just a guy that's so naturally funny in his timing. You're either going to love him or you'll find him annoying. It's kind of like Jay from back in our day, where all he has to do is talk and it's somehow funny. Like the words he's saying aren't funny, but the way he's saying them and the specific timing he has when he says it, it's just...
He's just funny.
Yeah. He's very, very much like that. So like they'll be doing an episode about... relocation of beavers and how at one point in time they were taking unused parachutes from World War II and relocating beavers throughout the US by airdropping them. And while they're talking about this sort of silly science related topic, they're making jokes and building headcanon about these beavers. Or I would listen to one today at lunchtime that was about tickling rat tickling. So you know, rats tend to always have a dark kind of twist in their story when it comes to any sort of scientific shit, right? Like they're literally the lab rats. And it usually doesn't work out well for them. So they wanted to focus on a story that was like mostly good for the rats. We study a lot of negative things about the brain, right? Things like depression, things like brain injuries and stuff. We don't focus on things like laughter and play very often in scientific studies. So the study was mostly about that, trying to understand the origin of play, evolutionarily speaking, how related it is to things like fear and fight or flight and what parts of the brain that it shares. And the study was mostly around
tickling rats.
You have to listen to it. It's funny. If you just listen to 10 seconds of it, you'll be like, what the fuck are you listening to? Like they had one recently that was talking about landing on the moon, right? And Anthony's just going on. Every third or fourth word is some sort of backhanded joke about Kubrick faking the moon landing, right? All tongue in cheek. He doesn't mean any of it. 80% of the words that come out of either guy's mouth in the span of a podcast are complete bullshit, just trying to be funny around the edges of whatever serious stuff they're talking. They're not long episodes. They're usually 45 minutes, sometimes 50 minutes. And they're just, man, I laugh at everyone.
Laughter is good. We don't have enough laughter.
Who'd have thought that like two dudes doing a podcast could be a positive thing? I mean, I certainly didn't.
Well, we're certainly not.
Right? Well, I think that's our show. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you would like to submit your parting gifts, hit us up. Podcast at nerdingundertheinfluence.com. And I'm going to hold you to that D&D thing if you want to get on a game. If you don't mail us, you're out. We're done with you. Fuck you. You don't exist. Or whatever.
They're probably all bots anyway. If you're an AI and you'd like to play Dungeons & Dragons with us, please email podcast at nerdingundertheinfluence.com.
Now I got to go install a reCAPTCHA on our contact form.